What's up guys, Scott Martin here, dishing out some more fishing tips for you. You know, we've been talking about jigs a lot today on a lot of the other videos. Football jigs, standard flipping jigs. But you know there's another type of jig that is totally different than those other jigs I'm talking about. Swimming jig. You know, a swimming jig is a type of jig that is deadly in the springtime. Springtime and in the fall. In the springtime I like to throw, you know, your natural colors like we have here, this little, you know, bluegill shaded looking thing, green pumpkin. That's the type of swimming jigs I like in the spring. In the fall, I'll kind of prefer to go to a more of a shad colored, you know, white or a translucent type skirt. Again, if these fish are feeding on shad, I'm gonna throw the white or the shad imitation. In the springtime, a lot of times they're chasing those bluegill, I'm gonna throw these brown natural colors. Now, what makes a swimming jig? Because a swimming jig is totally different than a casting jig or a football jig or a flipping jig, because you're not dragging it along the bottom like you do with the other techniques. You're swimming it through the water column. In the springtime, these fish move up shallow in these coves. You take a cloudy day, or maybe you get in a pocket where there's a lot of submerged vegetation, a lot of shoreline cover, and you can take these jigs, cast them up on the bank or cast them out in those grass beds and do a steady retrieve back to the boat and swimming that jig through the water column, and those fish react to it very well. And the same thing in the fall. If they're up chasing bait, I'm skipping this jig up under docks, I'm casting around shoreline cover, trying to get those fish to react to it. Now, how am I going to rig up my swimming jig? Basically, I like a swimming type skirt, or a swimming type trailer like we have here. With a swimming jig, you don't want to do nothing type trailer. I want something that's going to swim. This is a little swimming chunk trailer here. This is a little crawdad that's got little legs on it, undulates in the water. And the reason you want these little swimming legs is it keeps that bait keeled upright. So it's going to come through the water perfectly straight. The swimming jigs typically have a lot lighter weed guard, so they're not as heavy duty of a weed guard, and they have a head to them that is totally different, very weedless style head, kind of, you know, just a real easy coming through the water type head versus a big casting or flipping jig here. You can see the difference, how wide that particular head is versus this swimming jig here. It's got a nice narrow, nice little point to it. A lot of times their swimming jigs are a little bit more highly detailed with eyes and whatnot on them because, again, they're imitating some type of swimming fish, you know, a bluegill or a shad. So how do I like to rig up my swimming jigs? Basically, I like to rig them up on a 7-foot to a 7.3 type rod. Don't really like a big giant flipping stick for a swimming jig application. Medium heavy to heavy action. And I like it on a little bit lighter line. 14 to say 17 pound test fluorocarbon is great. P-line makes some good stuff. 100% fluorocarbon is what I prefer. Or down here at Lake Okeechobee, a lot of times I'll fish braided line. If I'm in a lot of heavy grass, Guntersville, Texas, Florida, you know, places like that, you can get away with some lighter braid, you know, 50-pound test braid. With the swimming jig, again, you're not dragging it on the bottom. I'm basically making a cast out there, long cast away from the boat or to the cover, and I'm going to hold my rod in a fixed position and basically just reel that bait back to the boat, real similar to a spinner bait, and just reeling it through the water. A lot of times I like to keep it a foot or 2 foot under the surface, all the way back to the boat. Now, occasionally I'll stop it and pause it, maybe change the angle of the rod a little bit, because I want that bait, instead of just swimming constantly through the water, I like to have my swimming jig kind of go through the water, then maybe lift up a little bit, drop down a little bit. Again, you're trying to imitate some type of bait fish. And bait fish sometimes move in the water column different ways. So you don't want to overwork it. You don't want to give the bait too much action. So it's pretty much a steady retrieve. I like a slow to medium retrieve. I don't want to reel it real fast. It seems like when I reel the swimming jigs too fast, I just don't get that many bites on it. So a slow to medium retrieve, long cast. Again, I really prefer, probably my line of choices would be the 15-pound P-line fluorocarbon, 7-foot rod, and I like a pretty high-speed reel, you know, a 6.3 to 1 or a 7.3 to 1. This is a 7.3 to 1 Helios here. I like a high-speed reel for the most part because, again, that bite's a little different. You're reeling that bait along, and you'll either feel him knock slack in the line, and if that happens, you got to reel real fast and set the hook, or you'll feel him grab onto it and you, again, of course, set the hook. So it's a totally different approach. Give it a shot. Try it like I'm talking about. You guys will have a lot of fun with it. So stay tuned. We've got some more tips coming up. And before you leave, subscribe to the channel down below. See you guys.